Hitman: Word of Assassination is one of my favorite games of all time. I have the most hours in it compared to any game by far, and I am genuinely amazed by the depth of a seemingly shallow gameplay cycle. Hitman revolves around a sandbox-style gameplay, which encourages you to approach situations from a new angle every time you try something, and this is only possible because of how much love and care was put into these missions. The quality of this game was so good that it inspired me to start my YouTube channel. The purpose of this series is to take a closer look of each mission in the 3 games and analyze them, discovering their strengths and weaknesses in the process. Let's start with the very first mission in the trilogy, Paris, which also happens to be one of my favorites. After you completed the tutorial, this is gonna be your very first mission. And let me tell you right now, in all 3 games, the first missions are all some of the best in their respective games, and Paris is no exception. This might be a bit of a hot take, because I know most people prefer the next entry on the list, but Paris is my favorite mission from Hitman 1, which is my most played of the 3. This is the mission that hooked me into the game. Every time I finished the run, all I wanted to do was to immediately reboot it again and try something different, test my limits. And this is really what Hitman is about. Because of this, expect my opinion about Paris to be a little biased. Let's set up why you're here. There is currently a fashion show held in one Palais de Vilevska. I don't speak French, sorry. And 2 very important people are present, Dalia Margolis and Viktor Novikov. They are the ringleaders to an organization called Iago, which mainly deals in information around the world. This is important because they acquired a dossier of all British undercover agents of ICA, and they plan to sell it at a heavily guarded auction at the top floor of the mansion. This obviously would be a serious blow to ICA, so they sent 47 to eliminate Margolis and Novikov during the show. Hitman never failed at making high-stakes situations, and Paris is no different from the rest. Now let's go over the mansion's layout. I just want to preface that everything Paris does should be the sample for all upcoming content related to Hitman. There will be better missions coming up, but almost all of them have similarities to Paris' layout. The layout of the mansion is completely symmetrical, both the inside and outside areas. When you first boot up the mission, the red carpet is an immediate beacon to show you where to go first. The parking lots and loading areas to your right and left are all blocked, which might seem discouraging at first, but in reality, the fact that you can't just walk in directly makes you think that, maybe there's another solution? And sure enough, if you walk around enough, you can find out that you can bypass both the security blocks by vaulting over the garden walls, although now you're in trespassing territory. There are 3 types of areas in Hitman. Public spaces, where you are allowed to be and people only turn hostile when you have done something illegal. Trespassing areas, where NPCs and guards will escort you out when found, and hostile areas where you are definitely not allowed, and guards shoot on sight. Originally, there used to be only public and hostile areas. However, this is way too punishing and illogical, so IO decided to change it and introduced trespassing areas. Paris has 0 hostile areas, so you are incentivized to explore every inch of the map. So if you follow the red carpet, you can get inside the mansion and meet your first target, Viktor Novikov. As said in the briefing, he is currently literally basking in the spotlight, walking down the stairs with all eyes on him. It's almost like he's offering himself in a silver plate to you. Your first instinct might be to shoot him there and now, but the surrounding guards will quickly remind you that this is never going to be this easy. In Hitman, you have to first observe your targets from the crowd, spotting gaps in their movement to isolate and eliminate them. Right next to the Grand Hall is the fashion show itself, blasting the iconic catwalk track that will be stuck in your head long after you finish the mission. Next to this area are the bar and dressing room, with the first being a public space and the second closed off for guests, with only dressers and stars allowed in. Both these locations are important, since Novikov will often patrol around to both these areas, providing you with kill opportunities and intel. Let's talk about the outside area of the mansion. The parking and loading area serves as a transitionary space between public spaces, with some important stuff sprinkled about, paired with light security. This means that some disguises are easy to obtain here, like event security and event staff. Behind the barn areas are gardens, and this is one of my only gripes with the mission, as the amount of content in these areas is wildly unbalanced. So next to the bar, you have an excellent sniping spot, the best disguise in the entire map, tons of great tools, a free entry to the auction by a pipe, cicada disguises, and on the pavilion and livery area, you have a single boring-ass mission story and a hammer. Really disappointing. Doesn't really help that the helicopter and the speedboat are both niche exits that aren't really used much. The basement is the best designed floor on this map, at least for me. There is so much useful stuff here that is worth a visit on every run. It does not take up too much space and is easy to memorize. Let's go over the things the basement holds. This is basically the behind the scenes part of the level, as you can't hear the show music here, and you mostly just find staff working in the kitchen or at security. Speaking of security, this is the first introduction of cameras in security rooms, and it's once again done excellently. The security room has multiple entrances and guard pathings that are easy to exploit. Also, a seemingly little thing that is actually brilliant, the door is open from all sides. But why is this so important? Because once again, the player might just think about shooting the camera box instead of going through all the trouble of going inside the room and manually disabling them, which is illegal to do in any disguise. You can of course find plenty of useful items in the basement and then exit at the end of the mission. But what's most important is that the basement connects to literally every place of the mansion, even the outside ones. This makes traversal in Paris feel really smooth, and it's another reason why it's my favorite from Hitman 1. This floor has maybe the least amount of content, and mainly serves as transitionary space between floors, or a step up in security compared to the ground levels. The mansion's security increases each floor, as the player might notice that to get up to the first one, they either have to find the appropriate disguise, like security or tech, or need an invitation, or if you're feeling shady, just climb a pipe. This creates a challenge for the player, but the game gives you the tools to solve it. On the ground floor, when you walk up to the officer that guards the stair, he will tell you which disguises are allowed and which are not. This is called the disguise hierarchy, and it was already present in the tutorial, but obviously in a much smaller scale. Let me explain how it works. So, if you steal a dresser's disguise, then walk up to the stairs, you won't be allowed in. You have to find a disguise at a higher rank to advance up those stairs. Once you find the appropriate one, let's say security, you are now allowed to the first floor. But to get to the second one, you are going to need a disguise that is a higher rank than security, and so on and so on. Paris' biggest challenge is the increasing security between floors, and once you figure out how to bypass that, you have officially cracked the level and now can do whatever you want. If you choose the invitation option, however, the game has plenty of those too, like the one in the bathroom, or the two guys talking in the garden. You just gotta look hard enough. This is where the auction itself is held, and the host is none other than your second target, Dahlia Margolis. One half of this floor is revolved around her, with a lot of smaller rooms, mostly centered around Dahlia and the auction, each with their own little purpose, like the bathroom being an isolation kill, lots of mission stories, and the auction itself. The second part of the floor is taken up by the attic, where the cicada guards have their base and where you can find some useful items. I did not have much to say about the attic, because there isn't really a lot in there. The more important place is the auction, that you can actually take place in if you have an invitation. In Hitman, with a few exceptions, there are two types of targets, usually one of each. There is a roamer, who, as his name suggests, roams around the map, mostly in public spaces with longer loops, but also more opportunities to take him out. Then there is the Dweller, who stays in a more secluded and secure area with a limited base loop. Victor is the roamer out of these two, and Dahlia is the Dweller. Victor's main loop has him starting in a grand hall, shaking hands with some important people, then going to the dressing room, where the observant player can find out that there's conflict behind the scenes. Another key character, Sebastian Sato, has to take the main stage during the Sanguine fashion show, but he's very reluctant about it. So he and Victor will constantly argue, because if Sato is injured or otherwise unable to attend the catwalk, Victor will have to take his place. A looming opportunity. Victor then goes behind stage and to the kitchen to have an argument about his sweets not being perfectly prepared, then has some cause with some important people. This is a pretty short explanation of his loop, but most of his kills come from mission stories, and I'm not that invested in the story and the smaller lore details, so I cannot really comment on that, unfortunately. So Victor's challenge is finding the way to somehow sneak behind the scenes and taking him out silently, because it is near impossible to kill him in public without some kind of accident. He spends a lot of time among people, often in the most crowded places on the map, like the catwalk or dressing room or bar. This is understandable because he's obviously the face of Sanguine, that's the show, which means there are hardly going to be any gaps in his base loop. This is good, because it forces the player to get creative and utilize the mission stories to lure him to his death. An interesting thing about Victor's bodyguard, Kurt, is that you can actually put a medic poison into his food, which will make him nauseous, so you can knock him out and take his disguise and phone. And with said phone, you can cause an emergency evacuation, which will have both of your targets run into a safe room on floor 1, letting you take out 2 birds with 1 chandelier. This opens up a lot of new kill opportunities and makes the mission a lot more diverse. A very nice detail. Like I mentioned previously, Dahlia is the Dweller target, which means that her loop is entirely centered around the auction. Her base loop is fairly short, with her only moving within her room, the auction, and the private terrace to have a drink. This might not seem much, but I can name at least 3 ways to take her out during each of these locations. For example, when she's having her drink, she is pretty isolated at the table, so you can use clever coin tactics to lure her to the balcony to push her off, or poison her drink, or fiber wire her after luring her to the rooms next to it. Dahlia almost never leaves the 2nd floor except in emergency, so you're gonna have to find a way up there, and this is basically half the challenge of her. She has a lot of personality, and you can really see how cunning she is by listening to her conversations. She also has some really satisfying methods to take her out that I will discuss later in the video. Paris has a decent collection of mission stories. Before I go to the wiki, I try to recollect how many mission stories are there on the map, and for Paris, I remembered a lot of them instantly, but some of them are just really forgettable. Even so, the good heavily outweighs the bad here, so with that, let's jump into the first one. Many think this is the signature mission story for Paris, and I disagree, since there are much better choices for an iconic story. Lights Out consists of you grabbing the crowbar, then getting to the attic and dropping the light rig on the catwalk below, crushing anyone that is unfortunate enough to stand below it. The intended target would be Victor. However, as I mentioned before, Sato was the one that's supposed to walk the catwalk instead of him, so you have to step in by poisoning Sato's drink and knocking him out. This means that Victor now has to go on stage, where you can loosen the mounting on top and drop the lights. My problem with this mission story is that it comes with a lot of collateral damage, which is very unprofessional and out of character for 47. And somehow this is canonically how he killed him. A rare scoop. This is such a bland mission story. Pam Kingsley, the reporter, is a recurring character in Hitman, reappearing in Marrakesh and on several TVs around the world. She is here at the show and sadly lost her camera lens. Luckily, there's a spare one nearby, and giving it to her results in her interviewing Novikov. The opportunity here is that you can hide an explosive in the camera, so you can blow him up when the time is right. An okay setup, but the delivery is just really meh. A drink to die for. This is potentially one of the first mission stories that you are going to hear, at least it was for me. On my first playthrough of Paris, this is how I killed Victor, so it remains pretty memorable for me. However, when you look a bit deeper, this mission story is pretty dry. All you have to do is get a waiter disguise, grab the bare knuckle boxer recipe, and with an admittedly cool animation, make the drink in front of the sanguine CEO. And with that, pour some rat poison into the drink to give it some taste, and let the toilet do the rest of the work. Since we are still in the learning phase, I understand that these mission stories are still simple and understandable, but I think Io could have shot up a little higher, with, for example, stealing a key for someone to access his locker which has the recipe. But I digress. Let's move on. Playing with fire. Now this is the one. Playing with fire is big, and it's because it gives you a lot of options instead of one fixed path. This one involves you stealing a fireworks remote that you can then manually activate to have both of your targets, along with most other security and staff, walk out to the mansion to admire the sky, making the whole map blind for about a minute and a half. You now have several opportunities depending on your setup skills. If you rig the gas lamp on the balcony near the auction room and get rid of the guard next to it, Dahlia will blow herself up and lighting a cigarette, resulting in a free accident kill. But if you decide to be bold, you can push Dahlia off the balcony, right onto Victor's head, killing them both with a double accident. If you're feeling even spicier though, you can position yourself in the barge's tower and snipe them both from far away, then escape on the helicopter. This mission story gives an armada of options to take care of the targets, can be activated manually, and you don't need a disguise for it. Perfect. 10 out of 10. Guest of Honor. Honestly, I don't like this one bit. It really feels like 15 seconds of fame, but a worse version of it. So this one involves you stealing the Shay's clothes and thus gaining unlimited access to most of the map with very few enforcers to match. You can do the exact same thing with Helmut, except blending in at the auction, but if you're not looking to roleplay a shake, I suggest you don't bother. A private meeting. A private meeting has potential, but it's set back by being too slow and dragging on. Finally, the pavilion is being used. For this one, you have to acquire a bodyguard disguise and lead an important person named Max Decker to a meeting with Novikov to the pavilion. The problem with this is that you have to do the escorting yourself, and escorts in this game are insanely slow. However, even if you escorted Decker, you still have to wait for Novikov and sit through the whole meeting without doing anything but blending in, since everyone around you is an enforcer. Then you finally get the opportunity and it's a push kill. Slow, anticlimactic, and wastes the whole pavilion. 15 seconds of fame. Another really strong mission story, with this one featuring Helmut Kruger, who is a fan favorite both in-game and in the community. One of the first things you see arriving at the red carpet is him on a huge poster, and after you wander around a bit, you can catch him in the gardens during the photo shoot. Then he goes to a secluded area to make a secret phone call with Dahlia, which is where you can find out that he is one of her celebrity spies. Then you can steal his clothes to acquire the best disguise in the entire mission. Dahlia agrees to a meeting, but first you obviously have to walk the catwalk. How glorious. After 47 absolutely slaying it, you can meet with Dahlia in her room, where you will be handed a jar of poison, which you can then immediately use to poison her own drink when she isn't looking. Then you are all left with the best disguise on the map and are free to explore and exploit. A quick break. This one is pretty simple, but manages to stay in the OK category because it does not take away from the mission like a private meeting, but it doesn't add much either. You have to steal a USB stick from the Sakata security center in the attic and insert it to Dahlia's laptop to sabotage the auction, to have her come into the room and fix it to herself, left almost completely alone. It's a good mission story, nothing more but nothing less. At least you can do it in your suit, which does give it a little bonus. Listen, all of the Word of Assassination missions look stunning, so I will mainly be focusing on the theme of the missions. And for Paris, it manages to be pretty good. Going undercover at a fashion show is quite an interesting idea, and the social stealth pyrofantasy is really present here, which is one of my favorite things about Hitman. The introductory briefings in Hitman 1 are way higher quality than 2 and 3, with 2 being a barrage of sound and visual effects which takes away the professionalism of 1, and 3 being more focused on cutscenes, but overall returning to the formula of the first game. This particular briefing hypes me up a lot, with the best part being the end with the
Then again, I do know how you love a challenge.
And the mission status active ending. Excellent theme for Paris. Paris is one of the most replayable missions for me, and it all comes down to how well made the layout is and how diverse assassination opportunities are there. You can put up this mission 5 times in a row and do everything differently, all in your starting suit. I think I gushed enough about the layout and the targets, but the conclusion is that you can see that IO has spent a lot of time to make Paris as interconnected and well designed as possible. Silent Assassin Suit Only is another strong point of this map. Whether you are a beginner or have hundreds of hours in the game, you can still have a ton of fun with Paris. None of the mansion is completely restricted, and you have multiple paths up to the auction, for example by a pipe, or with an invitation, or by going through the basement all the way to the fish shack. However, with the fireworks remote, you don't even have to go up, just snipe your targets from afar with the sniper. Guard pathings are created so that every room can be sneaked through. You can also do a few mission stories with just your suit, and even if you don't do any, there are a lot of accident kills around the mansion. Paris is a dream Silent Assassin Suit Only map, both for starters and experienced players. I think Paris is one of the best tutorial maps I have maybe ever seen. It genuinely sets the bar so high that when I play other levels in Hitman 1, all I want to do is go back to Paris and just keep playing it. All the different routes and avenues of murdering people you can take is genuinely amazing. Definitely one of my favorite missions of the trilogy, and one of the main reasons why I started this series. The showstopper definitely deserves all the praise it gets. So this was me praising Paris for nearly 25 minutes straight. For our next mission, we will be traveling to the small seaside town of Sapienza. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do leave a like and subscribe if you can. It really helps my channel, since this is my first video ever and my first experience with recording and cutting a video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. I will leave you to prepare.